Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cosmic Owl Astrology with Louise Edington. I am your wisdom weaver, the Cosmic Owl of Cosmic Owl Astrology, and I'm here today to do a video forecast about the upcoming solar eclipse on September the 21st. But before I do, I just want to give you a little bit of an update of what's going on in my life and in the world. So first of all, I've been at amazing astrology conference in Sedona, Arizona for the last few days. So I've been quite offline. I reconnected with a couple of people I've known for some time who I hadn't connected with for ages. But I also went for a pre-conference workshop with the fabulous Demetra George, who is in the astrology world. She's kind of a major rock star, especially around asteroids and the dark goddess energies. And I was able to give her a copy of my book, and she loves it. She actually started to read it while she was there. So I don't know if she'll write me a review or whatever. I don't care. It just made my day. So, if you haven't got your book yet, then it's on Amazon and at all other major booksellers, online at least. And also, if you have the book, I have 30 reviews now. They're trickling in. I would love you to leave a review. Please, 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 please. If you could take a picture too, that gets even more attention. It really helps the book get noticed if the more reviews it has. But anyway, let's dive in. Now, I am going to include some things that I used to include, and I kind of stopped including them for a bit, but I'm going to look at quite a few things on this report. So let me start by, I'm going to show you some cards, and as usual, I will look at the cards towards the end. Now, I've gone away from the Red Threads deck just for this, and there's a specific reason for that. The Red Threads Tarot, that is. I did study for a while. Most of you know that I also wrote a book on the complete guide to tarot and astrology. Tarot and astrology have amazing tie-ins, but there's a thing called decans, which divides a sign up into three 10-degree sections. So that means, there's 36 decans in the zodiac, and each decan has a tarot card that represents it. So I'm going to share these at the end. So this is the first one. This is the 10 of, well, in this deck it's discs, which is also pentacles for some decks. And I picked this deck, which is the Thoth or Thoth deck, because it's a very esoteric practice, the tarot connection with the decans. And it was actually created by the Golden Dawn Society. So anyway, this is the card for the actual eclipse. But I've also included this card, and I'll talk about what it all means at the end. Four of Swords. This is for the last decan of Libra, where Mars is on the eclipse. And this card is for the last decan of Leo, where I think it's the right one. I hope I've got the right one. I will check. I've got the I've literally just walked in from the drive home from Sedona, which took me day and a half, because I had to bed up for the night because I was so tired. But this is the decan for the so it is the right one. Yes, Seven of Wands for the last decan of Leo, and I've included this for a very specific reason too. So we'll come back to what the cards mean at the end, but I've also pulled some general cards for this eclipse. And I chose to pull oracle cards from the Witch Oracle deck, Woman in Total Control of Herself, by Angie Sullins, the writing, the oracle writing, and the art by her partner Silas Tobal. And I'll just show you them. But the reason I've chosen this is that we had a 0-degree new moon in Virgo. Then we had a full moon eclipse, a lunar eclipse on the 7th at 15 Pisces, with the sun at 15 Virgo. And now we've got another eclipse, but this is at 29 degrees Virgo. So we're in this major Virgoan season in many, many ways. And Virgo is very much about witches and the original, what witches really were, which were the herbalists, the medicine women, the ones that were connected with the earth, and the ones that would do the practical making of potions and lotions before the medical world became patriarchy, hierarchical as well as everything else has. And we do see a movement back towards natural medicines. I am a fan of both personally, because I believe we're moving into this age where we have both the left brain, the right brain, and interconnect everything and blend it all together. No extremes, bringing it all together. But anyway, so the Empress of Pleasure, and again, we'll look at these cards in full at the end. The Gardener of Hope. This one really lit me up because I have great hope for this eclipse, but it's powerful. Could be a challenge, but lots of hope. And then we get the Phoenix. So I hope the glimpse of the cards will encourage you to stay all the way through to the end till I do the cards. So let's look at the chart, and then I'll just talk a little bit about the things I'm going to talk about. Oh, no, that's not the right thing. Why does this happen? Okay. I've only been back an hour and I've already got too many windows open. Oh. So this is the solar partial eclipse chart. Now I've added my extras as always. I probably won't talk about them all, but I may talk about many of them. Now this eclipse is at 29 degrees Virgo. On the day of the eclipse, Mars will be at 29 degrees of Libra, and I'm going to talk about what all this means, okay? But 2 days before the eclipse, we've also got the Moon and Venus meeting at the very last minute of Leo. By the eclipse, Venus will have moved into Virgo, but we've actually got a lunar occultation. So I'm going to talk about that. Now, some of the patterns that I'm going to talk about. So this new moon solar eclipse is partial, but gosh, with these aspects, it's powerful, is opposing Saturn. Saturn has moved back into Pisces. Saturn is less than a degree away from an exact opposition on this eclipse, which is, close to exact for these big energies, especially because it's an eclipse. So I'll talk about what all that means. I'll talk about, give you a real in-depth feel for Virgo, for the energy of Virgo. But other things I'm going to talk about are some of these patterns, and we've got quite a lot. we have three yods or yodes, some people say, fingers of fate. I call them fingers of destiny. I prefer the word destiny. I think we're destined to be alive at this time. But they do have a fated feeling as well, eclipses. And we've got three fingers of destiny in this chart. So the orange one, you can see, is from Venus sextiling Mars, which she actually exactly sextiles Mars as she enters her occultation. And this one is pointing at Saturn. So, and sorry, Neptune and Saturn. You can see that they're still traveling close together. So I'm saying it's pointing at both, really. And then we've got one pointing at Mars and one pointing at Venus. The one pointing at Mars is going from Neptune and Uranus to Mars. And this one is Pluto sextile to Neptune, is pointing at Venus. These are huge. Because I use a lot of asteroids and things, I see fingers of destiny quite often. But these are big ones because they're all involving major planets, okay, for a start. And there's three of them, and it's on an eclipse. Now, the one with a sextile from Venus and Mars pointing at Neptune and Saturn is actually a boomerang yod, or a boomerang finger of fate or destiny, because it points at Saturn, which bounces back or boomerangs back to the eclipse. So this adds to the intensity of the eclipse. So can you see that? If I maybe just do this line in orange, you can perhaps see that it's a boomerang yod. Just look at the orange lines. Now I'm going to actually clear some of these lines. Oh gosh, sorry. I was trying to get my cursor back. I'm going to clear some of these lines off because I want to show you another pattern that's in there that I'll talk about. So much going on this, right? So much. Let me get rid of all those fingers of destiny, fingers of fate. And I've got so much to talk about, but I just want you to get an idea of the patterns or the configurations of aspects to see how complex this is. So one other configuration that we have going on is this lovely watery grand trine. So it goes from Black Moon Lilith to Jupiter, and that goes to Nessus, the Centaur, and to the North Node in Pisces. Now, this water grand trines have a lovely kind of cleansing feel. You can see the blue lines of this grand trine there. But so we have this cleansing, purging energy I'll talk more about as well. So let me finish and get rid of that. By the way, that's making a kite, by the way, to the south node. So we've got a kite pattern that's in water and earth, with the water grand trine, the flowing triangle, and then the string of it at the south node, which, if you remember, the nodes stay at the same degree right through the eclipses, okay? But not only that, though, we have another one. So this is just like crazy. I'm sure I could find other patterns if I wanted to, but you know, I'm not going to. So this one's a bit out of sign, but because the moon and Venus, so the moon and the sun move into the sign of Libra the very right after the eclipse, we've got an air which is an out of sign grand trine on the eclipse itself. Air grand trine, okay, but that's a fire and air one pointing at Neptune. So we've got all the elements making these kite patterns, which take flight if you think about the energy. One of my cats is making a weird noise. I think they're a bit wanting attention because I just got back. The other thing I will mention is, because it's so close and it happens right after the eclipse, is that Mars is applying to square Pluto. And I'll talk a bit more about the Venus-Mars sextile. But if I could kind of describe what's going on here in so many ways, is that we are really at the end, or coming to the end, of some major cycles. And there's some major change coming, and some major purification, some major release. Mercury is still under the beams of the sun, being purified by its own sign, Virgo. It's been under the beams of the sun for its whole journey through Virgo. It's not out of the sun's beams yet. So Mercury, our perceptions, our thought processes, our ideas are still being purified behind there. So something is going to emerge from this. Venus is moving really fast and is going to start catching up to the sun soon. But I'll talk more about that as well. So I've probably fried your brain. So here's where we just stop sharing and we talk about what all of this means. Now let's get a really good feel for Virgo. I think the sign of Virgo gets such a bad rap. It's the keywords generally associated with it are I analyze or I serve. And they are part of Virgo energy. Virgo is very adaptable and analytical and very service oriented. And Virgo is known to be very meticulous, very organized, very practical, hence my reference to it being about the witch, with those practical kind of earthbound hand tools kind of thing, crafting, making things, alchemizing herbs and so on. It's also known to be very helpful and a perfectionist, and it can be all of those things. And Virgo is known for its sharp attention to detail, which I think is a very key point to really focus on through this eclipse, so that you can ride this wave. Pay attention to the details of the world, of what's emerging from you as well. But it's also got this ability to break down complex information. And because it's analytical and meticulous, Virgo energy make great editors. They make, they can see what's wrong in things. And I think that's where it gets its reputation of being hypercritical. Though, to be quite honest, most Virgos I know as a sun sign are usually more hypercritical of themselves than of anybody else, though they can be critical of others. But it's usually because they want to be useful and meaningful in the world. They want, they want to go, you could check this, you could change this, But anyway, so yes, organized, efficient. They love structured environments and constantly seek to streamline processes. So that speaks a lot to a lot of this purifying and purging energy that we've got in this eclipse, which is huge right now. Okay. And so, it also has this kind of cleansing energy as well. And that's why Virgo has this reputation for being very puritanical, very clean, clean eating, clean body, neat, tidy. And some, I have seen Virgos that are like that. They look like that. And they can be quite picky about their food, but not all Virgos are like that. I have some Virgo friends and they're definitely not like that. But it's got more of this being whole unto oneself kind of energy, the Virgo. It's very mind, body, spirit, come into itself. The symbol of Virgo looks like an M, right? In many ways, with the fish tail at the end. It's very connected to the elements, the sign of Virgo. And that's why it has that reputation for being very down to earth, very practical, and using its hands to create things. But it also can use its mind. So, it's diligent, it's a hardworking kind of sign generally. And it's also can be known to be a bit of a hypochondriac and oversensitive because Virgo is very much about the holistic health kind of sign. And Virgo can be a sign of worry. So, but let's look at some other words because I love some other words for Virgo. I think particularly this season with this emphasis of these eclipses and that new moon in Virgo. So we had one at the very first degree, one at the last degree, new moons, one eclipse, and then the full moon at the middle degree. There's a lot of emphasis on coming into integrity and surrendering to flow and letting go and connecting with that more fluid, more interconnected, more intuitive side, more creative side, and really kind of surrendering some of that perfectionism to moving with the flow so that you are able to do more practical and meaningful work in the world. Okay. So it's a mutable sign, which means it's adaptable, changeable, all of those things. It's an earth sign, so very grounded as well. And it is Mercury guided officially. I also can see Ceres in it as well because it's definitely connected with the Wheatsheaf. The actual constellation of Virgo, or the constellation of the priestess, as I think it should be called, actually has kind of the Wheatsheaf at the end of it and the fixed star speaker, which I will look at a little bit as well. So anyway, let's have a look at some other words for it. Virgo can be very conscientious. It's kind of that more humble kind of giving nature, not kind of leaping into kind of me first, like the sign before it, Leo, kind of shining out in the world. Virgo in the tarot is the Hermit card, so it's kind of got that energy of staying within itself. All right, so it's really but it's a sign of wisdom. It's a sign of real high wisdom. And I always try and pay attention to things I'm hearing. And one of the astrologers who was on one of the speakers at the Sedona event talked about wisdom. And Virgo is this wise energy that's kind of this earth wisdom, but it's also this practical, mystic kind of wisdom. Okay. But it's very much about doing the right thing, very much about integrity, very much about being conscientious and doing things because they are meaningful to you as well. So, could I say any more words? I just think come out of that energy of always seeing Virgo as neat freaks and as being hypercritical and being kind of a little bit mean. I don't see them that way. I think Virgo are actually a very kind sign. two of my favorite Virgos, Bernie Sanders, who is all about the working man, the people, doing the right thing by working man. He's very much about kind of getting everybody healthcare. Healthcare is a right, all that kind of stuff, very much about the class war, the worker, the unions, the working people's unions. That's very Virgo. And the other one is Keanu Reeves. And if you know anything about him, he's very similar in nature. He's done a lot of good work in the world. He's always giving his money away to causes and doing more humble kind of things in the world and doing a lot of meaningful things for other people. And he also plays in a band. Talk about playing with your hands, just because he loves doing it. He's Dog Star. We saw his band a few months ago. So, Virgo, please do not underestimate Virgo, and don't go on to those kind of more shadow words of it. And I think that's part of this new moon eclipse, because it's opposing Saturn for a start. So it's opposing Saturn, and Saturn has just moved back into Pisces, and Saturn is elder wisdom also. And Saturn is in Pisces, helping us to let go of layers and layers of limiting beliefs, but also about kind of seeing lessons more clearly. And if you remember, when I looked at the chart, we have this finger of destiny from Venus and Mars. Mars in Venus' own sign, and Venus will be coming from Leo into Virgo. But this is really I'm going to talk about the Leo part. This is kind of about bringing the heart and our relationships in together and pointing them, looking at this, letting go of some of these old beliefs, rigid rules, all that kind of thing. I see there's a real potential for this eclipse to start to bring people together as perspectives are changing and people are waking up. And then that finger of destiny that points right at Saturn boomerangs right back to the eclipse, so we can bring it in practical ways. It's got a feeling of we are being a bit humbled on this eclipse in a good way. Again, some of these things really kind of, these words are sometimes a bit challenging, right? Aren't they? Okay. But it's a cautious sign, so as well. But we'll talk about the degrees in a minute. In fact, actually, no, let's talk about the degrees. So this eclipse is also at the very last degree of Virgo. It's a term that we use in astrology for that degree is Anaretic. Now, the history of that term, it actually comes from the Greek word. I'm not going to try and say it in Greek, but it literally means taking up or destroying, depending on the context. In ancient astrology, Anareta meant the destroyer or taker away, the planet or point that brings about death or decline in a chart. Now, it's death of something. It doesn't necessarily mean a human, although it can. And incidentally, right in the middle of these eclipses, we had the shooting in my state of Charlie Kirk. I'm only going to talk about this in archetypal terms. The sun was conjunct the south node right on the shooting at 18 degrees of Virgo, right between the eclipses. I did mention, I think in my video with Kathy, about it being kind of circling the drain, and the sun shone the light on the south node on the day of the shooting. I'm not going to comment on the person, but it's been an energetic shake-up. It's shaken a lot of people in a lot of ways, and I was really concerned about it. I'm not a fan of anybody dying by the hands of another, so that's all I will comment on it. But archetypally, as it happens in here, this has been a bit of an earth shatterer. Energetically in Utah, things feel really strange, to be quite honest. I'll let you take what you like from the rest of that. Okay. But anyway, so over time, though, as Western astrology developed, the Anaretic degree comes to mean the last degree of a sign. And that's because it's seen as a critical or unstable point, carrying the sense of exhaustion or taking away of a planet's power before it transitions into the next sign. So the root is Greek, and its use in astrology carries the idea of something that undoes, exhausts, or ends. But I would also like to bring in, kind of how more modern 20th century and 21st astrologers are really starting to use it, the more psychological approach, which is what I do. This is more about this culmination before passing on. It makes it a liminal space, all right? It's more symbolic than literal death, okay? But it still has this flavor of undoing or ending. So let me kind of give you my kind of take about it. Okay, I wrote some words here. At the 29th degree, which is where this eclipse is, where Mars is in Libra, and 2 days before, where where Venus and the Moon are, in fact, at the last minute of Leo. So we've got 3 anaretic placements in Leo, Virgo, Libra. All right. So this is, can you see how this is endings? And then it's a solar new moon eclipse. So it's new beginnings. I did pull the Phoenix card, just saying. Anyway, let me read you the words I wrote. I just wanted to kind of put some thoughts down. So the 29th degree, the sign itself exhales. It's the crisis point where this old story, that's very Mercury, right, can no longer hold. The threshold between what has been lived and what demands to be born. This is the completion degree, the sign's final harvest, gathered with urgency as if time is short. It's the karmic degree where threads of unfinished business rise from the depths, asking to be witnessed, to be repurposed, or to be released. It's the exhaustion degree, energy stretched thin, yet also the transmutation degree, where pressure turns the ordinary into the alchemical. We're being asked to really alchemize in this. And what does that mean? That means finding the gold within something, right? Alchemists were trying to make gold the whole time. And that doesn't necessarily mean literal gold, of course. But, to kind of, from my perspective, I think we're being asked to alchemize the higher energy of the sign and leave behind those old stories in astrology, but also in our lives, okay? So here endings carry the seeds of beginnings. It's the let go degree, where something must be surrendered so the next horizon can be crossed. Do you like that? Anyway, so as mentioned, we've got these anaretic degrees, 3 of them. I do want to show you the Venus occultation. I'm going to show you on a map. So bear with me. There is a site called in-the-sky.org, and you can do a search. I usually, well, yeah, you can find them if you want them. But so this occultation of Venus is just 2 days before. It's at 29 degrees 59 minutes of Leo. This is how long it lasts. It's just 2 days away as I record this, because we've got this eclipse coming up. And this is the map of where it will be visible. It has a path like an eclipse, because a lunar occultation is like an eclipse. So we've got 2 eclipses at anaretic degrees, and we've got Mars at the anaretic degree of Libra during the eclipses. And they're all speaking to each other with all these fingers of fate and destiny all pointing to each other. And we've got all the elements speaking to each other in these 2 kites of an air grand trine and a water grand trine, with the fire ignited by the wind of the air grand trine, and then the water also kind of lifted up by the south node in Virgo, letting go, that old story. This is pure letting go, endings, creation, new things coming. But somebody again at this conference described, she said she felt like she was in a washing machine right now. I had described it as being in the eye of a hurricane, with kind of, that quiet spot in the middle. But that's where you aim to be. Many people will feel like they're being churned around by this, like they're in a washing machine. So this is just huge, to be quite honest. All of this, it's just enormous. Then, just to add a little bit more, bear with me. I just want to add some things to my software, and all stars. I believe Sheat. Actually, let me see if I've got it on my listings. So going to first Virgo, I'm going to tell you if there's any significant asteroids right on the eclipse, then conjunct Saturn opposing. So bear with me. I did have them, but I did just get back. Okay, so not very many well-known asteroids on the Virgo end of it, except Achilles. Remember Achilles heel? The Achilles heel is at 29 degrees Virgo as well on this eclipse. I think we're going to be finding our own Achilles heels in many, many ways. So just add that to it as well. So it's actually only 16 minutes from the actual eclipse. Then I'm going to go to Pisces, to the opposite end. And Saturn. Yep. I believe, though, fixed star Scheat, which is not a nice star, apparently. I don't use many. So I'll put Scheat in there, and we will come back to the chart in a moment. Let me show you. Okay. Oh, no, I did not want that. You don't need my list. Here. Scheat, fixed star Scheat, is conjunct Saturn and almost exactly opposing the eclipse. Scheat's at 29:34. Oh my goodness, that was way back in I'm having it's square my ascendant, and it's mutable, and it's technical, so more technical kind of shenanigans, so bear with me. Eclipse at 29:05, Sheat at 29:44, actually on this. It's actually quite an unfortunate star regarding this C. It's said to be associated with misfortune, disaster, and drowning, but also can be connected with the choice to take one's own life, but also self-undoing. So beware of this, all right? Especially because it's with Saturn, with these endings. I think some people will choose out on this eclipse, either literally by choice or their soul will choose. However, don't despair. It does not guarantee doom, because my experience and that of other astrologers is it can bring the chosen passing or demise of many of your patterns. From what you get clear, even if it's a bit challenging, it's something you've really got to let go of, is kind of saying it's about letting go of this accumulation of big lessons ready to be reborn. Okay. So I don't, some of these ancient descriptions of some of these fixed stars are really kind of like weird. But, it's there. And if you are aware and conscious of it, some things that come up for you, for either from within or from without, may reveal some of your own toxic patterns or toxic patterns of others. And then remember, it's all boomeranging back to Virgo, rebirthing, writing a new story in lots of ways. So this is not going to be an easy eclipse, right? But let's have a quick look at that occultation. I just want to talk a little bit more about that as well, because they don't happen that often. I went back through, back to 2012 when, things started to change a lot. Well, it started before that, but 2012 has that, Mayan calendar thing. And, there was one occultation of Venus most years. There was 3 in 2015. They're not that common, though. 2 in 2016. But then between 2017, there was none in 2018. In other words, there was 1 in 2017, 1 in 2019, 2 in 2020, 2 in 2021, 1 in 2022, 1 in 2023, 2 in 2024. So they happen fairly frequently, but I could not find one that was at an anaretic degree, let alone at this very last minute. Talk about a liminal threshold degree. If you go back to everything I said about that anaretic degree, this is at the very last minute, immediately after this occultation. Well, in fact, while the two are still, while Venus is still hidden by the moon, which is what is happening. The moon is traveling in front of Venus from our perspective, blocking out her view from us. She's literally eclipsed. And occult means hidden, so hidden things are going to be revealed. So if you can see, the exact conjunction is 8:21 a.m. Eastern. And then right after, 2 minutes after, the moon enters Virgo. And then a few minutes later than that, Venus enters Virgo. And what else is there? And I've talked about this before. Fixed star Regulus, which moved into the sign of Virgo, all those great keywords I gave you at the end of 2011, just before I started looking for all these occultations. So look at this as we approach the eclipse. This is on Friday, on Venus Day. So this weekend is ginormous, ginormous. Now then, I'm going to fry your brain a little bit more because there's some cycles also being activated. So Mars and Venus, the masculine and feminine sides of ourselves, okay, our will and our drive and our love language and our values in many ways. And there's more I could say about that. Now, the Mars-Venus cycle began, the current one began on February the 22nd, 2024. And where did it begin? It began at 6 Aquarius, which is on the south node of the USA. And, well, I think we can see where we've been going since then. I'm not going to go through all the aspects, but I will get to the opposition. So that was February the 22nd, 2024. Then on December the 12th, after the election last year, Mars and Venus opposed each other. But look at this, Venus was still at about almost 6 degrees Aquarius, where Mars and Venus met. Now, that's just because of the different speed of the cycles. So again, this is on the nodes of the USA, though. This is like the full Venus, full moon Venus. And now, as we come into this eclipse, Mars and Venus were their exact sextile was September the 15th, which was yesterday. I'm recording this on Tuesday the 16th. And now we're in like the waning part of this cycle. Okay. So Venus will start moving towards Mars because she is the faster moving planet, and they will eventually be conjunct again on January the 7th, 2026. And that will be, look at all of this in Capricorn. I think we're seeing a collapse of many structures, and this is a new beginning of starting to create some new structures. But we'll see. Now, if you bear with me 1 second, because you guys know I see degrees. As these two start their next cycle after this eclipse, the moon will be at 18 Virgo, where the south node is right now, opposing Nessus, the revealer of toxic patterns and abuses of power, toxicity. It's an ongoing story that's going to unfold over the next months. This eclipse is just igniting. It is huge. I could say more, but I'll be here all day. This is going to be long enough as it is. Now, the other thing I do want to look at is that right after the eclipse, three days after, nothing in terms of this energy because it's so big, Mars will square off to Pluto. But look what's there, the moon. The moon after the eclipse is conjunct Mars. They will square Pluto. Then we've also got a newly discovered object, which I usually have on here, but I left her off just so I could add. And look at this, Haumea, regeneration. But Mars is moving towards Pluto. Okay. But this is the waning, letting go of a cycle. So I said all that so that you would know that this month is kind of like the peak ending and rebirth, or seeding and creating and washing away and cleansing. But it's an ongoing kind of keep cleansing, and keep rising from the ashes. Eclipses unfold over a little while. Okay, now I'm just going to quickly show you that Mars and Pluto began their cycle also back in early 2024, and that was at 0 Aquarius, which is also another hot degree. And so you cannot take this, you cannot make all this stuff up. Then we had 3 Mars-Pluto oppositions. The first one 2 days before the US election, another one on January the 3rd, when they had, and then another one on April the 26th. They have been bringing this major kind of loggerheads, power struggles, if you like, dynamics and things. And I always see the opposition as like a tug of war. And so it's happening within and without. But this square then is like the last quarter moon, the crisis in consciousness. And it's happening right after this eclipse, or the 2 eclipses, if you like, if you want to include the Venus lunar occultation, which I do want to encourage. So as you can see, we've also then just had the solstice right before that. So, you know, the solstice, sorry, not the solstice, the equinox. Oh, my bad. Equinoxes are equal day, equal night, at either side of the, or either hemisphere. And for us up in the northern hemisphere, it's the waning of the seasons heading towards winter. In the southern hemisphere, it's kind of the rising of the light. Okay, so right before this square, the day after the eclipse, we also have the equinox, which is always another turning as well. Could this be an even greater turning, or what? It's just wild. All right, enough astrology. I've fried your brains. I just want to talk to you about why I pulled these 3 cards. So the Golden Dawn, they assigned a card to each decan of those 36 faces, if you like, the decans, each sign, you know, of the zodiac divided into 3 10-degree sections. There's 30 degrees in a sign in the zodiac, the circle of animals that we use, the tropical zodiac. Now then, I don't think it matters what house system you're using. The last 10 degrees are still the last 10 degrees. So we have the Venus occultation on the 19th happening at the last degree minute of Leo, and that is valor. Okay. Sorry, I meant to get my lovely favorite book about these cards by Angeles Arian. Oh, I love her book. But this is Mars in Leo, and how you know, Mars and Venus speaking to each other right on this eclipse, and making a finger of destiny pointing at Saturn, the man-made laws. Mars in Leo is very driven. This is wands, this is fire. This is the card for the last 10 degrees of Leo, and it's a 7 of wands. You can easily find these online by searching, if you like to get you know, a rundown of which card applies to each decan. You might just have to play a little bit with your search terms, but this one comes from a site, Mr. Mr. Kaplan, kaplan.com/golden-dawn. Yeah, you can find it in there. But anyway, the 7 of wands represents the quality of valor. Valor is the courage to stay by what you value. Venus is value. Not to compromise or to settle for less. The central niched wand on this card, you see the one that's going up the middle, represents a reminder to trust your experience. If you have the courage to stay by what you value, things will unfold like the lotus blossoms, renew and regenerate themselves, or allow you to move in new directions that you value. And that's represented by the ibis or phoenix heads. And you are able to see things more clearly and able to honor your vision and creativity, which is represented by the Eye of Horus and the winged Eye of Horus staff. The astrological symbol of this card is Mars in Leo. It has the symbols on the cards. Mars is energy and vitality that can support your creative expression, which is Leo. So there you go. Okay, now then, I'm going to save the eclipse card for last because I'm going to go to the Four of Swords. Now, Mars is at the anaretic degree, that liminal critical degree again, but this time it's swords. And swords are thinking, which is an air sign, which is Libra. But Libra is the sign of justice, right? And all of those things, balance, harmony, justice. Here's the page. This is the truce card. Truce. Look at this, everything coming into center. But look at that jumble behind. That could be this, you know, crazy washing machine feeling that we're in at the moment, like thrown from one side to the other, unless you come to that center within yourself. So this is the negotiating mind, the conflict resolution mind, or the mediating mind. So this is about negotiating both internally and externally and coming to some balance and harmony and agreement. And isn't it interesting that Mars came up for the Venus placement of this, and the negotiation and peace and coming together of thought, hearts and minds in many ways has Mars in Venus sign. This is such a time where we are going to be asked to integrate both wave and particle, each other's ideas. It's starting to come together, to listen together, to create truth. It's about being open, flexible, but staying in balance and non-positional. And that's Libra. Okay, so the truce-making process, Angeles says, is a fourfold process, and that's the four swords and the four tiers of the lotus blossom flower that's on here. Okay. The fourfold process is truth that's experienced on all four levels of consciousness, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And that's also represented by the integrating four swords into the four tiers of the lotus blossom. Ooh. And then last, but by no means least, the card for the last decan or decan of Virgo. And I really need to align myself with this book because I can't remember which order the minor arcanas are in. So, but this is abundance. This is wealth, riches, abundance, prosperity. The astrological aspect that represents on this card is Mercury in Virgo. It's through your communication skills, which is Mercury, and through your organizational skills, Virgo, that you can manifest abundance or prosperity in a tangible way. So this is also about using your communication gifts, the three Mercury signs at the top cards. Can you see them? And the three discs, right? Top three coins, sorry. The healing gifts, which are the caduceus at the bottom. You can see on the bottom disc there. And your inspirational gifts, the coins which hold stars within them. You are able to manifest abundance, which is represented by the Hebrew symbols for abundance in the middle three coins. But this is wealth on every level. I will say that I think people who've not been in integrity as they hoard their wealth, which is very Leo too, and we have that occultation at the end of Leo, are going to get a hard lesson as they face Saturn about their integrity and about this hoarding and greediness and me and wanting more. And as the wealth in the gap between the ordinary man, Virgo, and the Leo, the elites, if you like, is highlighted starkly. And people are going to say, had enough, come to an end. Let's do away with this. You will know that these kind of authoritarian power grabs have never lasted usually in history. There's always a rebalancing, but this one's really big. So right, lastly, we're going to use these Witch Oracle deck cards. So first is number 18, Our Lady of Pleasure. I'll hold her up again in a second. The Empress of Pleasure. Pleasure is your birthright. It's not something you have to earn or deserve. I'm just going to go. We've spent much of our lives learning from pain. That can be that Virgo South Node energy, and moving towards the bliss energy of Pisces. Follow your bliss. Look at her. That's all I'm going to say about that. But this is the card saying, do a meditation retreat or paint that wall purple or whatever, brings you pleasure. Okay, now is the time to pay special attention to whatever brings you joy and do more of that, moving towards that Pisces North Node. That can be a place of transcendence, right? Transcendence and joy. So, 46 card. This card just made my soul light up when I pulled it for this energy, which is not just the eclipse, it's 2 eclipses and all the other things I've talked about. But we're going to spend the rest of the year kind of shedding a lot of the old stuff that comes up for this eclipse, okay? So know that. So you might want to come back to it, to this. I'm going to get timestamps on this one, which I forget to do sometimes or don't have time to do. This is the Gardener of Hope. We might think of hope as a flower or plant, its tendrils pushing ever upwards and outwards, despite the harsh conditions of winter and the ravages of storm. But actually, hope is more like the soil. It's the ground in which we grow. Without hope, we struggle to find meaning. It's next to impossible to get out of bed in the morning if your hope has dried out or been stolen away by crisis or heartache. And I think a lot of people are feeling that as we enter into this dark, balsamic phase of the moon in the next few days till Sunday. So I'm recording this Tuesday. So a witch knows when she wanders into circumstances that feel hopeless, that when she does, her primary job is to ask for help. One friend, a family member, a therapist, or an ally will suffice. She only needs one person or the connection with source or nature to sincerely listen to help you create a space of safety so that you can hear your own voice, and release the weed-like fears holding your garden of hope hostage. If you're struggling to find meaning, seek an ally that will help you create a safe space so you can tell your story and hear your own voice with loyalty and compassion. Hope will return. Now is the time to tend that garden. All right. And then the last card. Oh, I don't know if I'm even going to read that. This is what I see happening. It may take a while to shake out. If you remember, we had the Venus and Mars aspects and their next cycles starting. Their next cycles both start in early 2026. So it's January the 27th for Mars and Pluto, and they will begin their cycle at 3 Aquarius. Okay, it's a huge chart for that. I'll be obviously doing a video nearer the time, but I just want to give you a heads up of the dates, because all these things are starting to converge for this purging, cleansing, tending the seeds of hope for what we want to see in the world and to create in our own lives. And then we have the Mars Venus conjunction begins on January the 7th. So these are beginning so close together. And these two new cycles are starting of the waning cycle we're in at the moment. They're both starting as Saturn and Neptune both start to move back into Aries. Then Uranus will station direct and move into Gemini. All three planets will never return to Pisces and Taurus again after these cycles start, after they move into the signs. And everything is going to look so different next year. This is another part of why I'm looking at the astrology gives my garden of hope great boost to plant it. You know, I tend my hope garden every day by looking at the astrology as well. But this month is quite challenging. This eclipse is really challenging. You may, or we may collectively, everybody's going to be affected differently. If you have strong mutable signs, so that's Gemini, Virgo, obviously Sagittarius and Pisces, you will feel it the most. But honestly, this is huge. So I think most people are going to be feeling it as well. Yeah. The eclipse happens to be square my ascendant, but there you go. You're probably feeling your personal change already, this sense of being wrung out, but new beginnings, new things being formed. There could be some surprises, and we've already had the big washing machine spin dryer of the death of Charlie Kirk here in Utah. That was kind of it. I knew instantly as it happened, because I heard like 5 minutes after it happened, because it was so close to here. I knew that this was really going to shake people in many, many ways. I could just feel it. But there could be other things too. So we'll see. But for you personally, stay in integrity, come into that center, plant your hope garden, do things that bring you joy. Let that washing machine swirl around you. Let go of things that you feel called to let go of, and plant those seeds of new beginnings to create a more meaningful and useful life in whatever way that it means for you. So, sorry, this is such a long one, but it's a huge eclipse. Bye.